From one of Australia's former leading homicide detectives, this is I Catch Killers with Gary Jubelin.
Some of the searches over there, some of the worst searches you could go through. Basically, there's no privacy. You're a criminal, what do you expect? Men should not be doing my strip searches. Male police officers, they were quite handsy when they were doing their searches, and then
You brush over it, but they were sexual assaults. There's no other way of describing it. It was you were stripped naked, internal body cavity searches by a male officer, as you described in the book, fondling you and then smelling his fingers.
I Catch Killers with Gary Jubelin.
This is a conversation I had with Cassie Sainsbury. You probably don't know that name, but what if I said Cocaine Cassie? I'm sure you've heard of that. Cassie Sainsbury and Cocaine Cassie are the one person, and today we're going to find out about Cassie Sainsbury. She was only 22 years old when she was imprisoned in a Colombian prison for trafficking drugs. Today she told us about what happened to her in that prison. How she was sexually assaulted, how she was stabbed, and even tortured in a dentist chair. It's truly frightening what she experienced. But she managed to survive and retain her humanity. And that's what she talks about today. This is a conversation I had with Cassie Sainsbury. I've heard so much about you, like I'm sure most people in Australia have heard about you. And speaking to you before the podcast and when we caught up yesterday, it became apparent to me that the perception that people have of you is not necessarily the type of person that you are. And yeah, we've got a long time to sit down and have a chat now, and I'd really like to find out who you are. So,
absolutely.
I have spent the last couple of days reading your book titled Cocaine Cassie, and I've got to say, what you experienced in the Colombian prison, I've got to say, to me, it seems like one of the most terrifying places you could be. Did you at any time in the 3 or so years that you spent in the prison think you weren't going to make it?
There was actually so many occasions when I just didn't think I personally had the ability to keep pushing through certain obstacles that kept coming up throughout the time in prison. But not only that, I mean, from the moment I walked in that prison, I'd never thought I'd leave it, to be honest. I thought I would definitely come out in a body bag. And it was a bit of a judgmental thought on my behalf as well. Obviously, walking through the prison, I was faced with some interesting characters. And instantly you go, oh, crap, I'm not safe here type thing.
Yeah.
And it's just through a visual because obviously there's some interesting looking people in there. And I learnt very quickly not to judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
But not only that, it was terribly hard to just keep finding a reason to keep pushing and get through it all at the end of the day, which was, I think, for me, once I finally found my way through, I guess, the dark period that most people would actually face being in prison, it was this, I wasn't going to let this prison this time be the end of me. It wasn't going to be it for me because it wasn't who I am.
Yeah. Well, you show, to my way of thinking, you showed amazing strength to get through it. And my observation is you came through it with your humanity as well, which is not easy in a place like that. Like, I think it was in your book, but some scary looking characters. A lady that had her cheeks sliced so she could stick a tongue out through the holes in the side of her cheek. That would freak me out.
She was probably one of my first encounters, and she absolutely scared the bejesus out of me. And you know when you see something and you don't want to look, but then you're so intrigued that you looked? That was kind of what happened with her a lot because it was just so full on seeing someone like that
Yeah.
with so many scars, so many cuts everywhere. And I just, she was scary. She was so scary.
And she made herself known to you. It wasn't like you just walked past her and let bygones be bygones. She came up and got right in your face.
Yeah, straight away. And I still, till this day, I don't actually really know how I made an enemy of her so quickly. But then again, being a foreigner, and I think this is something that I did go into a little bit in the book, being a foreigner and being there, it was almost this instant disrespect to them. And being obviously what they call a gringa.
Yeah.
So I come from money. I have money. I have it. I was probably, stashing it everywhere when I walked in prison, which is, I presume, what they thought I had done. And so it was just this huge intimidation straight away. And I don't know what she thought of me because oh my goodness, I was so close to pooping myself because it was just so, so scary. And I can't even sometimes find the words speaking out loud to explain how scary it is to walk through a prison in a different country, not understanding anything, and then start getting intimidated by these people and still having them like right here in your face and not understanding anything. And then later, obviously, going through a great ordeal with this lady.
Yeah. Well, let's to put it in context. It was the first time you'd travel overseas, I believe.
Yes.
Okay. You didn't speak Spanish.
No.
You had blonde hair in a South American prison.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like I would imagine being in prison, the way that you want to get through it is not stick your head up, not be noticed, and just do your time and keep out of everyone's way. That wasn't an option available to you from day one, was it?
It wasn't. And it didn't matter how much I tried to stay out of people's way, stay hidden in cells. It didn't matter. It just, obviously, it didn't help as well that there was such a public awareness that obviously, even over in Colombia, my whole case was still on TV over there. So even if I'd gone in and no one known who I was or anything, they were still seeing it on the TV and going, oh, if she's on the TV, she must have money.
Yeah.
What can we get out of her? What can we sell stuff? Can we go to the media, this and that? And it was just, if I was getting attacked from the outside, I was getting attacked on the inside. I had so many issues between, obviously, my family stuff as well. So there was no real time for me to kind of get my own head together and actually work myself through those first initial months. It was an absolute nightmare.
And I think a lot of people, even the way you talk about it there, and this came across not just through your book, but in the chat that we had the other day, that people had this misconception that, you were doing it easy in prison because you smile when you talk. I suspect, and this might be the old cop in me coming, you smile when you get nervous too. And I think people sort of misinterpret that, oh no, this was a walk in the park. It was so far from a walk in the park. We're going to talk about it in later on in the podcast, but we're talking, some horrible sexual assault, some violence, stabbings, all sorts of brutality that occurred in there. And I'll save it up, but I'm still traumatised by what happened to you in the dentist chair. And I don't think anyone will go to the dentist after that.
No.
But yeah, it was a foreign environment for you. And I want listeners, because we've got time on a podcast like this, I want listeners to get a sense of who you were growing up. Describe your childhood.
Ooh.
Those
My
bits
childhood.
those bits that you're comfortable in describing.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
okay. My childhood was, I had a good childhood to a certain degree. I had a dad who constantly provided, never went without anything. But then I also had my dad. My dad is very strict. My dad grew up with, he was, from boys, and then he had two girls, and my sister was my sister, and then there was me, and he had me in this little bubble.
Yep.
I was in a bubble. I rarely went out, after hours. I didn't go to parties. I didn't drink. I didn't do any of these sorts of things. And I think because there was always so many there was so much revolved around my dad that it was this constant fear of letting him down.
Yeah.
Because obviously when my mum left me with my dad, when I was 12 or 13, that broke my world. Oh, I'm gonna get a bit emotional. It absolutely, just one day, my mum and dad were arguing, and then she just up and left.
Yeah.
And that there, my world just broke. Because then I watched the strongest man in my life break.
Yeah.
He just, it was scary to see this man just absolutely break through that period of time. And I was there with him, and I went through everything with him. And so there was always this constant fear of letting him down, or seeing him, you know, be let down, that I wasn't going the right path. And it ends up controlling you a little bit, that you live with this constant fear of failing. And then obviously my sexuality came into it as well, because my dad's side of the family, they're Anglican Christians. And so then I was terrified of coming out. I lived in small towns. I got bullied because somebody said at a younger age that I was gay. So there was just this constant background of being bullied because I was fat, being bullied because I got my hair cut a certain way, being bullied because I didn't wear makeup, being bullied because I didn't go out partying. It was, so having this super low self-esteem, this fear of failure, being stuck in a closet and not wanting to be bullied more because I'd already copped so much. It was very, very overbearing growing up with those situations. Obviously, there are a lot worse and worse things people can go through. But to someone, I think I went through this through the age of 13 to 17. So it's really those age where you start finding a personality, start finding some character. And I just kept falling down further and further because I didn't like myself.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, because when you look back at those crucial years, it does have a dramatic effect on the person you turn out to be. And unpacking a few of those things, like marriage breakup, you never know how it's going to impact on the children, but you know it's going to impact on the children. And I can imagine you carrying the burden of trying to protect your father, even though he's your father, because your mother's left. So all sorts of issues there. And on this podcast, you're not the first person that's come out and said how traumatic their childhood was because they were suppressing their sexuality. And we've had tough guy blokes growing up in country towns where they couldn't come out because the last person they saw come out as gay was bashed, and by the father's friends. And the stigma. And you look at it now and you think, oh well, what's the issue? But the world was a different place not that long ago. And I would imagine a country town in South Australia would have a different view than, say, where we're recording in West Sydney about someone coming out as gay. So all those things do impact on you. And, the fact that you share it, and even sharing it still brings up those emotions. So we get you to 17. You're stunted. You're stunted in terms of your emotional development. I think we're saying that in the kindest way. What sort of life were you looking for as a 17-year-old? You were trying to break out and find your feet?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of paths that I wanted to go down. At one point, I wanted to be a chef, and I really focused on that. And then there was this huge breakdown, another family breakdown with my mum and my stepdad, which kind of caused me to actually head back from the city to York Peninsula, whereas I decided that I needed to find a different passion. Something that has always been inside of me is I want to help people. Doesn't matter in what sense, I just wanted to help people. So then I started thinking about obviously fitness and nutrition and trying to help people that have that very similar body dysmorphia aspect, because
Yeah.
I obviously, as I said, I grew up being bullied about my parents. So it was wanting to, I guess, help people feel better about that.
Yep.
And so then finished year 12, then I started studying fitness and nutrition. Was doing really well. I had a boyfriend. Um, and you know what? It was hard. It was so
Yeah.
hard having a boyfriend because um there's just no sexual attraction when you don't like the opposite sex. There
Yeah.
really isn't. So being in this relation where someone constantly obviously wants the intimacy and you almost feel like you can't
Yeah.
connect, and then so the relationship was really touch and go as it was, and then but at the same time he was still there. It was almost being accustomed to just having him there, not being alone, because I
Yeah.
had this fear of being alone.
Yep.
Uh, because being alone means that I was left with my own thoughts. I'd failed at being able to, I guess, be somebody's company type thing. It was heaps of the things that go through your head.
Well,
Um,
Cassie, what you're saying there, I think it's it's what we are as humans. We want that companionship and all that, and you found yourself in a situation that obviously wasn't ideal if you weren't sexually attracted to the person you're going out with. So, I would imagine you're fighting a lot of demons, personal demons in that situation.
yeah, and this guy in particular, he was he was my boyfriend coming out of school, and it was always this, if I've got a boyfriend, no one will say anything type thing.
Yeah.
Uh, Little did people know that obviously one of his best friends was gay and I had the biggest crush on her. But so anyway, finished my PT stuff, and then I was doing mobile PT and it was doing really well. And so then I kind of decided, if I'm gonna if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna believe in myself. I really have to put myself on the line and actually put it all out there. So I went and decided to open a gym.
How old were you then?
I was 19.
Pretty gutsy.
Oh, it was terribly gutsy.
Yeah.
I used all of my savings to buy all the equipment that I could buy, got a loan to get everything else that I needed, and theoretically, it was foolproof. So I thought, if I'd done so well mobile and had all these clients, well, even if I don't get that many memberships, I've still got my clients to fall back on. But unfortunately, probably about 4 or 5 months into it, I started getting really depressed. Obviously, watching this gym that I've just invested everything that I have in, paying off a debt for a loan, paying rent. And I realized that I wasn't moving forward, but I was actually starting to move backwards, and I was terrified. And
Yep.
so I did. I went into this really dark place. Again, popping back to obviously being in a relationship that I didn't really want to be in. It was there. And we ended up breaking up.
Yep.
We broke up. And again, I felt like I'd failed because I can't even keep someone around. And so I actually tried to kill myself. Uh, I just felt like I didn't want to feel pain anymore. I was so over this constant disappointment within myself, never being able to do anything good enough. And when I came to, I was in the Yorktown Hospital. And I still remember this so well because the nurse that I had, she was almost angry with me
Yep.
that I was there, and she was trying to get my IV into my arm. And so she stuck the IV in, and I have sinking veins when I get nervous and whatnot because I don't like needles. And so she stuck it in, missed the vein, and while she's got the IV needle in, she's moving around trying to get the vein. And it was so antagonizing. And she kind of looked at me and she goes, "Well, you're going to do this again?" It stuck to me, and I was like, "This is what you say to someone right now?" Like, I'm not in a good place, and I was angry. I was so angry that I was there because I really did not want to be there.
You didn't want to wake up.
I No,
Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
yeah, like I was so, I guess, drowned by so many years of all these feelings that I just felt like I couldn't keep doing it.
Yeah.
That I didn't have that strength to keep pushing through and finding reasons or thinking that it was going to get better. So that happened. And then when I was actually, this was over a Father's Day weekend. And obviously, I didn't see my dad. I was in hospital for 4 days. Nobody came to visit me once. I was
Yeah.
alone. Because of my veins, as I said, I don't have good veins to get blood out. My nurses started trying to get blood out of the veins between my groin.
Yeah. Be painful.
Most painful thing I've ever, like, that was a
Yeah.
pain that I don't, ugh. So it was almost being alone, being stuck with my own thoughts, not being relatively happy that I was still there. And then, not that I was being tortured, but in my head, it felt like I was being tortured. And then when I finally get released, after being cleared by the psychiatrist, I go back to the house and coming back to an empty house, and not just symbolically an empty house because I didn't have a partner anymore, literally an empty house. And but then I there was this quick moment there where I was like, shit happens.
Yeah.
You know, everything happens for a reason. And I had to keep reminding myself that, maybe this breakup's finally what I needed to find this strength to kind of go, you know what, I've hit rock bottom. Can't get any worse if I come out now.
Yep.
But I still couldn't. I still
couldn't
couldn't.
get out of it. And
No.
I just want to take you back to a comment that you made that and I understand this, and let's just clarify it, that you said that what you went through, other people have gone through a lot worse. There's always someone that suffers more than you. But the point I want to say to you, because you've been very open with us talking about deeply personal issues, is that it's all relative. Like if the worst thing that happens to you, it is the worst thing that's happened to you, if you know
Yeah.
what I mean. People
Yeah, no,
are,
absolutely.
there's different levels. We understand that, but what you're going through, it's sad. It's sad hearing you tell the story, and there's a lot of pain there. So I do get it. So I'm not sitting here going, oh yeah, but other people have suffered worse. This is what was impacting on you, and at that age to consider life might be better if you weren't here. That's quite quite hard to deal with. So you are you feel like you're at rock bottom at that point in time, but you went further.
Yes.
Yeah.
Boy, did I go further.
Okay,
Um,
tell us through the next how you got over from that situation where your life went, and let me say this: everyone and so many people have sat where you're sitting, speaking to us on I Catch Killers. A lot of us make poor life choices, and you're not judged by the choices you made in the past. You're judged by the way you've lived your life in totality. So I say that to you, and I want you to feel comfortable in talking about where your life took you.
okay. So after that part of my life, I decided to leave because, unfortunately, not unfortunately, but in that present moment of my life, I was constantly going to be running into people that would be like, oh, you guys broke up. Why did you break up? Oh, you tried to kill yourself. Oh, that's, very judgy.
Yeah.
So I decided that I needed to leave. I needed to start fresh. So I moved to Adelaide. And straight away, went and got a job at Anytime Fitness. I wasn't going to let that part fall down. And in the meantime, obviously, switching my life from moving to Adelaide, I had to close down the gym. Basically, went into liquidation. Then sold all the equipment to pay off the loans, sold the equipment to pay off the rent contract as well, so that when I actually did leave, I wasn't owing anything to those things.
Yep.
It was a very quick moving process, and I think sometimes that's why people are like, oh yeah, she just upped and left. But I didn't do it in the wrong way.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Like I wasn't leaving things without having a solution to it, because I don't believe in that either. So I'd rather have nothing and start with nothing again, but have obviously taken responsibility for that. So I get to Adelaide. I'm working at Anytime Fitness, doing okay, not great. The work, I think back then, working in a gym, it was very commission based, so it wasn't great. You worked a lot of hours and got nothing almost. Then, obviously, I met Scott.
Yep.
And I think when I met him, obviously both personal trainers, both kind of similar life situations. And it was just, I almost saw him more as a friend. Like I wanted a friend. And obviously we ended up getting together. I thought, okay, maybe I'm not gay. maybe it was just a thing. But within like the first 2 months, straight away, again, couldn't handle the relationship. I couldn't handle intimacy. It was all, it just, there's no other way I can say it. Just like,
yeah, I think that's a very good descriptive word. If you're not into it, you're not into it. So yeah,
well,
understand.
yeah.
Yep.
And so that relationship, so there were moments where obviously Scott didn't work, or he would work in certain jobs where pay probably wasn't that great. He did a lot of festivals, a lot of things, a lot of spending that he didn't need to do. And that is when obviously in this whole time, I confided mucho. Sorry, the Spanish is coming out of me now.
Spanish on me now.
Yeah. I confided a lot in obviously in female friend acquaintance, and we'd known each other since studying personal training, but I never kind of saw her as more than just this acquaintance, really.
Yeah.
Until we started seeing each other more. We started working around the same gym. We did all our practical around the same gym, which was great. I thought, oh, I've got a friend. I've got a female friend. And I instantly mistook, I guess, the affection and the time that she was giving me as she likes me.
Okay. Yep.
And it was nice. It was finally nice to see that I'd managed to kind of get a woman's attention, because it's so easy to get a man's attention when you don't want it. But then when you want a woman's attention, you don't get it.
Well, in the reading of you discussing that in the book, to me, I'd describe it, you were flattered by it, and flattered by the attention and a little bit excited by it.
Because it was really the first woman who'd kind of made me feel special.
Yeah.
Made me feel like it was okay to be, a disaster disguised in a human being, and still trying to move forward. So confided everything in her. She was my best friend / crush. And it started happening that she just started making these little hints, subtle hints, just little comments that made me go, oh, hang on a minute. Is that me? Or did she actually, hint that, maybe she's kind of in the closet, or she might be gay, or she might be bi, maybe, she likes me. But she never actually said, hey, you know what, look, I like you. She really kept it quite
enough to keep you interested.
Yeah, kind of, when you've got like something just right here and you want it, but you never get it.
Yep.
Yeah, that was kind of.
Okay.
Um, and then obviously she knew that I was struggling financially, and she kept saying, I work in this club. I run it. We do really well. You should come in and help me. I've got some issues. I can't trust staff. And she never actually really kind of said, it's a brothel. Because she kept saying, this club, this gentleman's club. And because I came from a bubble,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, cool. She's a PT, so it must be something to do with that. So when she obviously offers that, she told me she needed me. She needed someone she could trust. And I was like, I can do this. I can be this person that she needs. And so I went.
Yep.
I went to Sydney. And I think that is when everything just went from bad to worse.
Here am I sitting as a wise ex cop, but if you start to get involved in gentlemen's clubs, brothels, or whatever, there's some good people involved, but there's some shady type characters there. And I look at you now with all the worldly experience of surviving in a foreign prison, and I would imagine back pre time in Colombia, you would have been pretty naive thing coming to the big smoke in Sydney and hanging around with people like that. So I'd see you as what I would term very vulnerable, in a vulnerable situation.
Yeah. And I think that was really what she liked, because even later on, we had a conversation. I was like, well, why did you study in Adelaide? Like,
Yeah.
what's the deal there? And she just said, oh no, I prefer smaller towns. And obviously when she said that, I didn't really think much of it. But now with everything that I know, I kind of go, it's a bit of a fishing expedition, don't you think? Obviously.
You're looking back with the benefit of hindsight. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
found someone, and look at this young girl that's pretty naive, and I can lead her on, that type of thing. I think it's
So,
important what we've talked about there, because I certainly got that from the book, and I didn't realise your full story, because I've been drip fed like everyone else. You see the headlines, you read the article in the paper, or see a couple of TV clips, but that's giving a sense of what brought you into that world where. And I don't want to go into the full details of your charges. The facts are that it was 2017. You were caught leaving Bogota airport with 5.8 kilograms of cocaine in your luggage. I know you've been criticised for giving varying versions of events and different things in media interviews and court records and different things. I'm saying this, and it's not you pulling back, because if I wanted to explore that, we could explore that back. I've made the decision. I don't want to go into those details. I think we can agree that you made a mistake, and you paid for it very, very dearly in terms of what happened to you in prison. I want to talk about your time in prison, and in the discussion I had with you the other day, and comments I've heard you say, that you did the wrong thing, and you've paid the price for it, and you're sorry for the people that you hurt, and you've got your regrets. Is that fair to say? A summation of, I'm just talking about the offence that you were convicted of.
yeah, absolutely. I think there's no doubt ever when I've accepted responsibility that I did the wrong thing. And I think the thing that I really wanted to, I guess, put out there was, I guess, what actually got me there. Because as you said, so many different things came out. Obviously, there was a version where my family spoke out, where Scott spoke out, where my lovely 60 Minutes interview. And so it was all stopped, chucked, mixed together. And so really, by the time I had an actual chance to sit down and say, well, actually, let's start right at the beginning.
Yeah.
And we'll go through it, it didn't matter anymore. The important thing in all of that is that I've never not tried to take responsibility that I did the wrong thing. Because essentially, if I'm telling you the backstory, I could turn around and go, no, it wasn't me. But I think it's more so, it's a cautious cautious tale of really how you can get there and what can happen.
Well, I think if any good comes from this, outside of that, you've turned your life around and the things that you're doing, is it is a cautionary tale. Like, and that's why I wanted to spell out who you were up until that point, because I do get tired of people sitting and judging people on, they've done this, they've done that, therefore they must be a bad person. Let's take a step back. Let's go a little bit further, and what led you to that situation. Now, people could sit here and go, oh, yeah, well, I had a tough childhood and I didn't do that. And we accept that. We accept that. But everyone's different in the way they react. And I'm not making excuses for you. It was a serious charge. But you got, you paid your price. You served your debt to society. So I think we move on past that, because I also saw with some of the interviews, I thought it was a bit of an ambush. And you were being interviewed before you'd even been sentenced and you're in a foreign jail, and you're being criticised for not giving people up. Well, what I know about jail is you're not very well liked if you're giving people up, and if you're talking on a national TV show, giving people up, I can only imagine the reception you'd get back when you walk back into the prison. So I'm not making excuses for you, but I'm saying I understand why some of those interviews might have been misconstrued. You're in a very vulnerable situation. I sound like I'm defending you. Maybe you should have got me in to defend you at the at the court matter. But what I'm saying is I understand. It was a very complex situation. And I think people don't think, and I really appreciate how vulnerable circumstances you were in that prison. And we're talking life and death, and that's what we're going to talk about from there. So let's move on past the offence. Let's wind it back to the point at the airport. You're walking through the airport and you've been stopped by customs, and they've taken you to a back room. Tell us what happens from there.
I got tied up working with, obviously, the Gentlemen's Club and everyone that was involved there. And it was from there that, with my lovely friend, the offer came up to go overseas, and, well, it just all escalated from there. So I go into the back room, suitcases sitting on the table, still, and I've got these guards, these police, and other people there, and they're speaking at me because wasn't understanding anything. And one guy just goes, suitcase. And he pointed to it. And I said, yes. And then a translator that can't translate very well came in, and on his phone, he goes, can we open it? I said, that's fine. Open up the suitcase. They go, is this clothing yours? Yes, it is. Then they pull it aside, and there's this massive bag in there. They pull it out, start opening it. And I know people always criticize me on this, but obviously they unwrap. They're all individually wrapped, and they unwrap the first one. It was a box of headphones. And stupidly, it was almost relief when I saw it was just headphones. And then they started unboxing it. And obviously, in example, these headphones, in the box, there's like a middle part that's got some cardboard packaging. And they pulled out, obviously, a black roll. And they're like, is this yours? And I'm like, well, I didn't put it there, if that's what you're asking. And then they basically said they were going to do a drug test on it. Can't remember the exact word that they used. And if it comes back, I do believe if it comes back blue, it's positive. Yeah. Then basically it came back blue, and they straight, you're under arrest. And I stood there and I watched them keep unboxing these headphones and keep pulling out these rolls. And I remember standing there looking at it. Not only was I so pissed off that I was going through this, I was hurt because of everything that I'd just gone through beforehand, obviously feeling completely betrayed by someone that I really liked, to looking at all this cocaine and going, I'm never getting out of prison. Because I'd never really been around drugs ever in my life. Obviously, in obviously a brothel, you see bits and pieces here and there, but not like that. And I just remember thinking, I'm going to die in prison because it just looked like so much.
So when you were going to the airport, and we don't need to go into details, but you knew you had something that you shouldn't have in your bag, but you were surprised when you saw the extent of it when the border force or the officers were going through the bag.
Yeah, that's correct. I did know that something had been put in there, but I didn't know how it was or what was in it. I obviously imagined the worst,
Yeah.
but yeah, I just hadn't actually seen what it was or how it was coming or anything. So handcuffs on. I was very lucky that to a certain degree, I had a police officer who actually just covered up my handcuffs with a jacket, so it didn't create too much attention when I was being escorted out of the airport.
Yeah.
Was put in a van, taken to an anti-narcotic station, which is literally just over the other side of the airport, where I was questioned by the head commander via Google, and he's like, would you like a lawyer? And I said, yes, I would like a lawyer.
So when you say via Google with the phone, the translation through the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
I said, yes, I would. And then obviously he types back and he goes, oh, it's pretty late, so it might take a little while to get here. Do you mind if I just ask you a couple of questions in the meantime? And in the situation that it wasn't like I could just go, well, no, you can't ask me questions. So through obviously Google Translate, it was, where are you from? Where were you staying? What do you do for a living? Are you married? Kids? Basic questions that I didn't really see as harmful. And then obviously, do I have a contact number? And I'm like, there's my phone. And he goes, okay, is this your phone? And so he's got my phone. He's like, is this your phone?
Yep.
I said, yes, it is. He goes, can you unlock it? So I unlocked it. And by the time he went back and he went to look at it again, it locked. And he goes, take the lock off. And I thought, oh, okay. So I took the lock off, and then he grabbed the phone and put it in his drawer. Thought, okay, it's a bit weird, but okay. Then he kept going through some questions about what happened, really. Where was I staying? Did I know anyone? If I'd bought anything while I was in Colombia, places I'd gone. And then I get taken away and sat down by myself for like another 3 hours. And then I get brought this massive stack of paper. Like it would have been like this thick. And he goes, you need to sign all of this. And I said, but I don't know what I'm signing. Like, how can I sign something? I'm like, where's the lawyer that I asked for? No lawyer, not coming. And then obviously there's not really much I can do at that point. So I sign everything that I'm asked to sign. They still do a lot of manual fingerprinting over there.
Yeah.
So it was ink and fingerprint, all that sort of stuff. And then I get put in a van and taken to a medical center where obviously I'm attended by a nurse who sees that I've got bruises over me, obviously in between my legs and all sorts of places. And this nurse, same thing, translator, like, are you okay? Did the police do this to you? And I said, no.
Sorry, just so the listeners can follow it. Those bruises between your legs, that's from that. It's referred to in your book, the incident that's happened before the arrest at the airport.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
I was violated beforehand.
Yep. And again, just to put it in context with the version, this is the people that you were getting involved in bringing the bag out of the country, or taking the bag out of the country. And when you say you were violated, as described in the book, you were sexually assaulted.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Um. Okay. So with all these bruises, the reason why they take you to see this medical center is obviously there's a lot of issues with police brutality over there. So if you get hit or anything by a police officer, they could potentially ruin the whole case.
Yep.
So they take you to these medical centers and they make sure that you've been treated well through your arrest. So basically said that the police hadn't done anything to me, and this nurse is trying to talk to the police officer that's with me, and the police officer's just saying, I don't care. I don't care. I don't care what she's been through. I don't care what she needs. Just do what I ask, and that's it. So then I get taken back to the same anti-narcotic station, and within 2 or 3 hours, I'm taken to the courthouse, where I actually get a chance to meet my prosecutor beforehand. And it was so nerve-wracking because although it was happening really quickly, at the same time, there's this whole window of opportunity that if they don't manage to get you with your charges within the first, I think it was 36 hours of your arrest, they can't actually hold you in any kind of holding cell or anything. They have to leave you on parole. So these people were moving really quickly because obviously I was arrested over Easter. And over there, they've got more public holidays than they know what to do with. So it was, they had to get it done really quickly. So I went into the courthouse, met my prosecutor. She seemed like a genuinely nice, caring prosecutor as far as they go. And she basically said to me, like, what happened? Because it doesn't make sense. And I, at that point, you kind of like, do I trust you? Can I speak to you? Because I've been traumatized that the police are involved, that they've got this under the belt, that they've got all these people. And I go, who can I actually speak to? So it was really, I was quite, who do I trust? So I just said to her that there were other people involved. Didn't say who. And she just said, it's so obvious that you are a mole. You're the fall guy.
Yeah.
She said, unfortunately, whether I can prove or you can prove, at the end of the day, the drug was in your suitcase and it was in your name and you did the check-in. She said, so although you might have gone through a lot of things beforehand, that's the facts. And you can't argue those facts, which was true. So went into having my charges officially put against me, and I was told that I was going to be facing up to 456 months of prison.
Do the calculations. What's that for?
It was like 30 years, and I'm sitting there because I do everything in months, and I'm like,
when all this was going on, what was going through your mind? Like, this is, you've gone from, I'd say a relatively sheltered life in terms of travelling internationally, and this is the first time you're overseas. You're in a South American detention or being held by South American police, and you've been told you might be doing 30 years. How did you hold?
At that moment, I go, I'm going to be 50 something when I get out, and although I laugh now, at the time I was cold. Like it was almost like this shock. I was frozen. And I'm doing the math and I go, I'm going to be 50, 52 when I get out. Like I'm not going to have a life. Like I'm not going to have anything. And it was absolutely mind numbing. And even now, when I still hear the amount of months that they initially said, it just sounds like an eternity.
Yeah.
I hadn't even seen what their holding cells look like, let alone the prison. And I was just worried about, getting through those potential 30 years. not everything else that could potentially happen in between that as well, being in those environments. So I was kind of like, okay, 30 years. Right.
Yeah.
What do I do? Like, how do I reduce it in my head? Like, that's kind of the
That's
process
what
where
that
it
was
went.
going through your head. So they
Yeah.
obviously got the charges within the allocated time. And then my understanding, you were taken to a detention centre, and that's a whole nother level of panic and fear. Do you want to talk us through that
Yeah.
when you went to the detention centre?
So it was about 2 o'clock by the time all my charges had officially been pressed against me. I'd been told that I was going to be held in El Buen Pastor women's prison in Bogota. But the guards had already told me that they didn't have any capacity for me at that time. So I was going to a holding cell. And I honestly thought I was going back to the anti-narcotic station because
Yeah.
for me, that's technically holding as well. When I get taken to a different place, and I'm taken underneath the building, and then there's this door, and they stood there knocking on the door, and then these two police officers appear, and they look at me, and then they're speaking, no idea what was said, and then I was told, you're going in here. And so I still had like a bag full of some clothing that I had been allowed to keep. And they've tipped it out on the floor, kicking about, pulling stuff out and saying, oh, this doesn't go through. This doesn't go through. Left with pretty much nothing. Then I get searched, which is some of the searches over there. It's some of the worst searches you could go through. Basically, there's no privacy. There's no personal space. There's no nothing. And some people would go, well, you're a criminal. What do you expect? But at the same time, there are still some basic human rights. Like, men should not be doing my strip searches. It's women should be doing it with the same sex. So the men, male police officers, they were quite handsy when they were doing their searches. And then I'm told to obviously get dressed again, get ready, walk through. And then I find myself in front of about 60 men.
Cassie, just on just on those strip searches, like and what you said, and it's you brush over it, but they were sexual assaults. There's no other way of describing it. It was you were stripped naked, internal body cavity searches by a male officer that was behaving rather strangely, and as you described in the book, fondling you, and then even after he's searched you, smelling his fingers and doing stuff like that. Like, people need to understand. Like, people think, okay, you're a criminal, okay, obviously we've got to search criminals before they go into prison. But what happened to you was outrageous. And I think people need to understand it to appreciate your full story. And I'm sorry I bring it up in the detail, but because it must be hard for you to talk about. But what your experience, it made me angry even thinking about it. I don't care what type of crime you've committed, to be treated like that was so wrong.
I think sometimes to kind of a way of processing through those situations, obviously, because there was quite a lot. You just go, it's a part of it. It's what happens. And for me, a lot of those situations, I kind of had convinced myself that I deserved it.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that was a mentality through, I guess, through the first 2 years of it all, really.
I suppose it's a survivor's mentality. You've got to come to terms with it some way, otherwise it'd break you.
Yeah, and although it was hard every time it happened, it really was kind of, well, this is what I get. This is what I deserve. This is my fault. I'm here because I did this to myself. So it was always constantly trying to justify something that isn't correct, but making it okay in a way.
Yeah.
So I'm in front of a good 60 odd men, and these are really old holding cells. So there's one big one on my left-hand side. There's a small one right next to the entrance, and then on the other side, there's another big cell. And then in front of me, there's 3 toilets, no doors, no toilet seats because toilet seats over there are luxuries. um, so I'm put into this little cell near the entrance, and I felt like I was a zoo expedition, essentially, because all of a sudden I'm there, all these men just flock, and I'm not understanding absolutely anything. They're saying things at me. The way that they look at me, I basically know the comments that they're saying. And I'm just left there with these men. And there was one guy who spoke very, very broken English, and he was kind of a bit of an angel in that instinct, because he really did help me along the lines in that time in those holding cells, because after being there for a day and a half, I had an encounter with quite a full-on male inmate, and he basically tried to sexually assault me while I was trying to go to the toilet. And this guy who spoke a little bit of English, he did manage to intervene, and entirely grateful. I actually still speak to this person. It was absolutely disgusting to be put amongst all these men in a different country where they know that a foreign woman, they're very vulnerable in those situations.
Yeah.
And the police, they don't care. Unless you've got money to give them, they will just throw you out there to the wolves and they'll leave you. They won't intervene. Actually, the police are often worse than the actual inmates. So it was absolutely disgusting to be in that situation. I do remember I had an asthma attack on the morning after I got there, and they refused to help me because I couldn't pay them to help me.
Yeah. A brutal environment. And when I was speaking to you yesterday, I had to just check I hadn't misread it in the book that you were sent to a male, holding detention centre. Like I couldn't believe it. It's throwing the lamb in with the wolves in an environment like that. And the scary part about when you were going to the toilet and the person that was trying to sexually assault you, he was speaking to the officers beforehand. It's almost like
Yeah.
they're involved. Like it's just
Yeah.
I think for people, we see these things on the movies, on the TV, and that type of stuff. But this is the reality of what you were going through as a 22-year-old. So if people judge you on the crime that you committed, well, okay, let's look at what happened to you. What happened to you after that. We might take a break now, and I think we need a break. It's pretty heavy conversation what you're going through. When we come back, we're going to talk about the prison experience, because this is, bearing in mind, this is just the detention centre. We haven't even got you in the prison yet. And what happened in there, we're going to talk about the bashings, the stabbings, the sexual assaults, what I call the torture session in the dentist chair. And I was already scared of dentists, so I think I'm not going to go there unless I have to after what happened to you. But interesting, Cassie, I want to find out how you survived and how you kept your humanity throughout, and how you've turned your life around, because I think that's the amazing part, because there's so many times looking at what the situation you're in, I don't know how you survived. So I'd be fascinated to find out how you navigated your way through that environment, because it was one scary place.
Terrifying.
Okay, we'll be back shortly.